Rex Totius Britanniae. Thank you everyone. I'm going to talk about today King Athelstan, also known as Rex Totius Britanniae, and he won the Battle of Brunanburh in 937. And the title Rex Totius Britanniae is the first, well, he was the first king of this island called Britain. And that, I mean, if you think about the Romans that were here for a few hundred years, they built Hadrian's Wall and Antonines Wall, but they didn't really get up there to the mountains, and every time they did, they went back, they eventually went back to Hadrian's Wall. They never conquered this island. Now the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, if you've ever heard of it, it's like an historic story of the time of the Anglo-Saxons from well, I don't know when it actually started, but they was here from after Rome departed, the Romans departed, around about 450 to 1066 at the Battle of Hastings. Although it still continued a little while afterwards. But the first writing in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle tells me what their intentions were, because they described the dimensions of this island, and that is a form of intent. And the intent was that they wanted to dominate this island from day one, because they didn't describe a certain part of the island, they described the whole island. And that was the first reading in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. So this was all done, this was all deliberate, and I believe that they did dominate most of this island. The lowlands of Scotland are as English as anyone else, any other part of England. A lot of people don't know this. Edwinsburg is the Anglo-Saxon name for Edinburgh, and of course when the Danes came here off Lindisfarne, which was the first arrival, there's an inscription in Lindisfarne, "God save us from the wrath of the Northmen," and that's well above Hadrian's Wall, and that was English territory. So it was as much English as anywhere else in England. And the Scots were pushed up to to the outer limits of the Scots and the Picts, outer limits of the British island up in the mountains. And it's pretty much the same for the Welsh. They was in the valleys and the mountains of West Britain. So it was totally and utterly dominated by the Anglo-Saxons. And by 937, Athelstan, 934 actually, he marched up to the top of Scotland on the east coast with his army and with a navy running parallel with him. And he got right up to the top, and he basically forced them to submit to his will, and that they would pay dues to him every year, and they would attend his court in Winchester. And that was basically it then. He'd become Rex Totius Britanniae. But they was really upset about it up there in the mountains, the Picts. And, I'm not sure if they were really Scots up there in the mountains, they were definitely where the Picts are. And they formed an alliance to turn against the Anglo-Saxons, and this was the Battle of Brunanburh. Now I believe the establishment know where this battle is, but we've been told nobody knows where this battle is. And I've spent a very long time trying to work out where this battle was, because it's a very, very important battle, and it's one of the bloodiest battles ever fought in this country, if not the bloodiest battle. 30,000 dead on one side alone. And this happened in 937, and where is Brunanburh? Everyone says. Some people say it's in Yorkshire, some say it's in Lancashire. Well, we worked it out where it was coming from. It definitely came from the Wirral, but we couldn't prove it. And the Wirral, the modern name for the Wirral is Brunanburh, and that changed around about 1723. It was always known as Brunanburh before then. But there's associations as well. If you have a look at one of them, you'll see a picture of the Thing, which is a Thing is an ancient name for a Norse Parliament. There's equivalent names in Iceland and places like that, but there was a local accent that the Norse would have picked up, and it became the Ding rather than the Thing, because they had, I don't know, a bit like John, they might have had a Lancastrian accent or a Celtic accent or whatever, but the Norse picked up this other accent and it changed it, and the professors of language and you've got some of the papers there, have confirmed that the thing became the Ding, and it's called Dingy's Mere. Now, in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, they described this battle, and they described that they fled back, the Norse fled back to their boats, their nailed boats, to Dublin, to get back to Dublin, because one of the Norse, the main North one, Olaf Guthrinson, was the King of Dublin, and they was building a Norwegian empire there, all down the east coast of Ireland up to the north, and they were moving inland. And they had colonies in the outer and inner Hebrides, and they had, the Wirral was also one of their colonies. It used to be Danish, but they sort of took it over. And of course they had the Isle of Man, the Orkneys, the Shetlands, Iceland, Greenland, and they went beyond to Vinland, which is maybe Nova Scotia in Canada. We know that they got there in about the year 1000. So they had a substantial empire, and they sometimes they were part of the Danish Empire, and sometimes they broke away. People call them Vikings. I think it's a bit lazy. You got Danes and you got Norse. Norse means Norwegians, and Danes means the Danish. And it's really simple. It's not really. It's a bit lazy calling them the Vikings, in my opinion. So what happened was the English with their intent. They've had a long time. Here I've got here is the casket, the Franks casket, brought to this country and given to the British Museum by Sir Augustus Franks. It was found in the. Is that right? It was found in the. In France after the French Revolution. It was a bit knocked about. This is a copy of it, and Sir Augustus Franks got hold of it. He acquired it, and he gave it a gift to the British Museum. So you can find out about it. It's in the British Museum. I've got a couple of copies of it. You've got one over there if anyone wants to have a look at it. And this is another thing. It's about what the Anglo-Saxons thought of themselves. They believed there was a people of destiny. And part of there's a lot of stuff on this Anglo-Saxon casket. But I'm going to concentrate on three things. Romulus and Remus are depicted on here, suckling from the she-wolf, and we all know who Romulus and Remus was. They were founders of Rome. They were twins. And we've also got the Anglo-Saxons wasn't going to let the Romans get away with that, because we had Hengist and Horsa, the Jutish pirates that were invited here by Vortigern to fight the Picts off after Rome departed, and they was offered gold and silver as mercenaries, but they wanted more after the battle, and they ended up fighting Vortigern as well after they got rid of the Picts, and they took Kent, and the first king of Kent was Hengist, and Hengist in modern name is White Stallion, and Horsa is also a horse, so Hengst and Horse, or Hengist and Horsa, however you want to describe it. And there's a lot of Christian portrayals in this casket as well. So this links at the Anglo-Saxons by putting Romulus and Remus. This casket has been proven to be made round about the 7th and 8th centuries, and it's made of whalebone. It has Anglo-Saxon runes all around it, and it shows what the Anglo-Saxons thought themselves. And this is in Northumbria where it was made. And this is the time of the Venerable Bede. Now the Northumbrians really could have been the masters of Anglo-Saxon England, but because of the bit that I mentioned earlier, when the Danes arrived at Lindisfarne, this basically sealed Northumbria's fate of going to be a massive area of Anglo-Saxon England that was half of it was going to be destroyed by the Danes eventually, because they were the nearest on the east coast of England and the first landing spot when the Danes came here. So their sealed was fate, but their fate was sealed that they were never going to be the masters of this island, because they were different tribes. And it was the ones that were furthest away from the Danes that managed to succeed, and they were the West Saxons. And but the Venerable Bede, who's a Northumbrian, you can see round about that time in Northumbria, they were setting themselves up to be the inheritors of the Roman Empire. With Hengist and Horsa and Romulus and Remus, they were saying that we're going to continue the work with Hengist and Horsa, and then we're going to have these Christian values, which is depicted on this. This is just something I've interpreted, and I thought it's something worth mentioning. So let's get back to the battle. The battle was fought, it was a day-long battle, and it was fought in the Wirral, at a place what we now call Brunanburh, but it's Brunanburh. And at the bottom of Brunanburh, what the burg means is a fort. And Alfred the Great, who came before King Athelstan, who was Rex Totius Britanniae, gave the idea of a country called England. As the Northumbrians fell, the West Saxons rose to become predominant, and after 878 at the Battle of Edington, Anglo-Saxon Alfred reclaimed half of England, split down the middle from on a diagonal line from London right up to Chester, which is next to the Wirral, and everything south of Watling Street was English, and everything north of it was Danelaw, and that was good for him. And he lost that battle, and eventually Alfred got him to be converted. So he had this idea of creating England, and Mercia was incorporated into Wessex, which was a big rival to Wessex. So now we've got half of England under Wessex rule. And as the time went on, the Danes were in decline now, and this really brought about where the Norwegians broke away from them as well, back in their Scandinavian homelands, and that's when the Norwegians started to form their own empire. They didn't want to go where the Danes went. They went over the top of Scotland, went to the Orkneys, went to the Shetlands, come down the west coast of Scotland, and settled in Cumbria, in the Outer and Inner Hebrides, down into the Isle of Man, as I said, and over to Ireland, and in the Wirral. Wirral's very important. It's a peninsula. It's easy to defend because it's surrounded on three sides by water, so you only have to defend one side of it. And we had to build, the Saxons had to build a fortification to defend themselves against these people, and it was called Brunanburh. Alfred had brought this idea of these fortifications when he was king, and he was the grandfather of Athelstan. And Athelstan was just continuing the ideas of Alfred to create a country called England, and with the intentions to unite the whole of Britain under one rule. And he'd achieved that in 934. So come 937, this was the front line. And this is what a lot of people don't realise. It's been suggested, the Wirral Archaeological Society have suggested it's there, and they're in the process of still trying to prove it. And there's been other people that have been suggesting it by place names. You'll see them there in the papers that I'll give you. But there's a place called Thingy in the Wirral, and Thingy really is telling us this is where the Old Norse Parliament was. And it's mentioned in, I've got a copy of it here, I can't show it on the film, I'm sorry, but I can tell you what it is. It's mentioned that there is a translation into modern English that the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle said they fled to Dingy's Mere, which was pronounced, Thingy was pronounced Dingy by the locals, to get on their nailed boats and sail back to Dublin. So this is the association, and through association we can prove that this is now the Wirral, because you've got the Brunanburh, which used to be called Brunanburh. You've got the fortification, you've got the boundary. It says written in many Anglo-Saxon chronicles that this was the front line in the 10th century between the Norse and the English. And below it was the Biddingsdale Brook, and above the Biddingsdale Brook in this little valley was Brunanburh. And then they fled to Dingy's Mere, so we've got this association of these place names to prove it's in the Wirral. But we've got more as well. My friend Brexit Matt Man, he bumped into his local priest where he lives, and he said, I need to talk to you. He's been trying to talk to him, he's always wanted to talk to him. And this time I think he ran out into the road and told him to stop, didn't he? He was like, he believes he's been told by God to do this, because what he found was unbelievable. He took him back to his church, his Catholic church in the bottom of Neasden Lane in northwest London, St Mary's Catholic Church, and in there he rang me up and he said, you're not going to believe it. This is the church that Athelstan went to before the Battle of Brunanburh, and there's big glass panes, stained glasses there, and we've looked into it and we found more and more about it, that the reason why Willesden is called Willesden, because there's a holy well there, and that's why Athelstan went there, to get the waters for the holy well, so that he could be blessed before the battle, and he would then believe that, you know, he's been given the holy water from God to win the battle. And he rewarded that church afterwards, because afterwards, in 938, that was just a wooden shack at that time, with a little well associated with it. He ordered that that church be rebuilt, and the Saxons never really built in stone. Everything was in wood, but this church was built in stone. And this is a great gift to that church that is recognised. And the whole of Willesden, it literally comes from this church and from this holy well that's there. So I then took on, I went on to my sat-nav and I typed in this church, and I knew then, what on earth was Athelstan doing there before the Battle of Brunanburh, if it's supposed to be in Yorkshire, like so many people are telling us. And I realised it's Watling Street again. Watling Street is very close by. You've got the Edgware Road running up, the A5, and then we found out that the Willesden Lane is an ancient lane that runs off of the Watling Street, or what we now call Kilburn High Road, and it takes you virtually all the way there to the church. It's unbelievable. And then I typed in on the sat-nav the church and trying to associate it with Watling Street, and there it was in Radlett, which I believe is east of Watford, and I've been in Radlett, and it's a very straight line, and when you're actually on there it says Watling Street, and you can see the history in this road, and it takes you straight up to St Albans, which the Romans called Verullium. And there it is, this church is literally in line with Watling Street in Radlett, and in line with St Albans. So for me, that was it. We've got it now. We've got it. He's obviously gone to. He's using Watling Street. Not to. He wouldn't use it to go to Yorkshire. He's used it to go straight to Chester, straight to the Wirral, and that's why we've got the proof now that it's in the Wirral. We found this out. It's unbelievable. And a lot of people. I mean, Bernard Cornwall. I've got a picture here. Bernard Cornwall's convinced of it. When the Wirral Archaeological Society, he's written a book now, he's calling it The Empty Throne. And I emailed him, he replied back to me, and he's convinced that that is also, but the Wirral Archaeological Society won't come out and definitely say this is the place of the battle. They're just, they want to cover themselves. But I believe in 2019, when they declared this was a very politically sensitive time. And they don't want us to have any nationalistic identity. What was Britain doing in 2019? They were trying to leave the European Union. And when you want to try and leave the European Union, and you've got a political elite that don't really want to let us leave, you saw how they dragged it out for years. They don't want us to find out things about where was the first battle that created a country called Britain. You know, they don't want that to happen. They try to hide it. And there was no, I actually worked this out without knowing what the Wirral Archaeological Society said in 2019. I thought I'd done it and I was the first one to do it, until I started delving into it more, and I found out that other people were saying it, like the Wirral Archaeological Society and some other people that were experts on the language, on the thingy. So yeah, but what's really important is that the establishment don't want us to know where this place is. So this is why it's so important. This is the identity of the British nation. And a lot of people want to destroy the British nation. We know that Sinn Féin want to destroy the British nation. We know that the SNP want to destroy the British nation, and Plaid Cymru, and they're all communists. Originally Sinn Féin was meant to be us alone, but they're not us alone anymore. They're in with mass unlimited immigration from Europe and anywhere else into Ireland. They're in for European Union membership. That's not us alone. They've sold out the Irish people. You know, people like Gemma O'Doherty and things like that, they're fighting for an Irish identity. And we know about the SNP. But there's English people as well that are trying to destroy Britain as well. And the political establishment. Look what they've done with Northern Ireland, with the protocol. They're trying to, in a very subtle way, to break Northern Ireland away, make it part of the rest of Ireland. So even our, we know they're all traitors, all of them. So they definitely don't want this to come out about Brunanburh. So the Battle of Brunanburh is a very important battle. It was fought when it was fought, and there was a massive defeat for the Scots, who was King Olaf, and Olaf Guthferthson, and Constantine, the Scottish king. I mean, I don't know how he survived. He got away 5 Scottish kings and noblemen got killed. Olaf had to go back to Ireland, total shame, never ever really got over it. And the annals, the Irish annals, I mean, I'm in touch with, what's his name, Dave the Chariot O'Reilly, he's on Telegram, and he's an expert on the Irish annals, and he said how well the Irish annals spoke of King Athelstan. Athelstan was spoke of all over Christian Europe, because what the King of Scotland did, Constantine, he was so upset that he had to pay tribute to the King of England. He joined up with pagans that wasn't Christian, and he broke the golden rule. He joined up with these Norwegians that wasn't Christians. They still believed in the old pagan gods, which the Anglo-Saxons used to believe in, and then they've attacked the Christian kingdom. But it didn't work for them. They all got destroyed, and that was basically it. And you know, he could have executed it a little bit more. Maybe he needed to go up to Scotland and remove Constantine. But my friend Brexit Matt Mann's going to talk about that afterwards. So I think we'll call that a day now. And Rex Totius Britannia.